Hi, my name's Chuck. I'm a photographer in the Plains States, and I have a particular interest in making art out of landmarks that a lot of people would just drive past. In fact, you can probably hear some driving past right now. This is a grain elevator just outside of Kinsley, Kansas, and it's right on Highway 50. If you've ever driven through Kansas to get to Colorado and you weren't on I-70, chances are you were probably on Highway 50 and you drove right past this. So today, we're going to talk about the history of this. So this is a grain elevator that was built just outside of Kinsley, Kansas, at a little community called Ardell. It's not so much of a community as just kind of an intersection of a couple different roads, even before Highway 50 came in. This particular one was built in 1915. The idea is that farmers can have a central place to bring their grain while they're in the process of harvesting. They can take it to a central place, they sell it here, and then it gets loaded onto the railroad cars right here and taken to the end user, wherever that may be. This design of grain elevator was fairly prominent in country grain elevators from the end of the 19th century all the way through to the 1940s. And we'll talk a bit about the reasons why they kind of went out of fashion. But they were built out of wood, and then you can see they had sheet metal outer structure. One advantage with this is that it was cheap to build that way. The disadvantage is that it's a bit of a fire hazard because the grain dust in the air plus any sort of spark can cause a big explosion. And that is still a problem that happens today. But with wood, that problem is exacerbated. It becomes even more of a fire hazard. So inside this grain elevator, there's metal sheathing around those wooden studs inside there. This design is called a balloon frame or a studded frame grain elevator. I'm not sure where the balloon thing comes from. The studded elevator, that makes more sense because it uses wooden studs for its main structure. We'll talk more about the details of this grain elevator in a little bit. Right now, I have about 4 shots of Phoenix 200 left on this roll. So I'm going to go ahead and try to get some photos on film while the light is still even. The reason I want the light to be even is because I know for a fact that the dynamic range on this film is dookie. So I'm going to take some photos when the light is fairly flat. Okay. Let's see what the exposure is. I'm going to use an app on my phone for that because I don't have a standalone light meter. So this is saying at f8 ISO 200, that'll be a shutter speed of 125. The sky is 250 and the ground is a 30th. I think 125 is a good way to kind of split it down the middle. So I just finished editing the video and I put in the film photos and everything. And it was my first time shooting with Phoenix 200 film. And this is a very experimental film that's new from Harman, who makes all the Ilford black and white films and everything. I figured just to be safe, since it was my first time shooting it, I would shoot it at box speed, which is ISO 200. And the images all came out underexposed, and there's zero shadow detail. Part of that could be like maybe the shutter speed is inaccurate on my camera. It is a very old mechanical 1960s camera. That is a possibility. But just know these photos are going to have weird colors and weird grain. These aren't the only photos in the video. There are a lot of digital photos that come after it that look great. The film photos, for film, I should have gone safe and gone with a film that I was used to, like Portra 400 or Ultramax 400, something along those lines. I've gotten a lot of really good results from those. I should have just shot with one of those films. Didn't do that though. So here's Phoenix 200 for you. I should shut up and take this shot. It looks good. Okay, here we go. 3, 2. That shutter slap though is nice. Let's see. I still got some more shots. I want to see what else I can get. So this incorporates the scale house. and the grain elevator. This isn't the only thing I'm shooting with. I'm also going to be using a digital camera, so don't worry, there will be more. The building behind me is a scale house. There are some scales on the ground over here that I'll show you. It's got a concrete top to it, but the truck or the wagon, as it sometimes was with this grain elevator, would drive onto the scale. You would weigh the whole thing, empty your load, and then drive onto the scale again afterwards, and it would tell you how much grain there was, and that would determine how the farmers would get paid. So I'd like a picture of the scale house as well, from roughly your angle, I think. All right, still f8 125. This is a 28 mil shot. There are some cars coming, so I'm gonna wait for them to pass. Here we go. 3, 2. That felt good. That's the end. With the digital photography, I'm gonna wait until about sunset and see if I can get some nice color in these clouds that you see above me. And then I'm gonna wait around after it gets dark and see if I can get some astrophotography shots here as well. The Milky Way should actually be coming up just down this road. So there could be some really good photography to be had tonight. Also, Mary is on her way. She'll be meeting me here at some point. You remember Mary, she was in my first video. If you don't remember Mary, then go back to my first video and watch that. Mary's here. That's Mary. I'm here. So the main source for today was the submission form to get this place onto the National Registry for Historic Places. This particular grain elevator was built by the Rock Milling Elevator Company. That's difficult to remember, so I'm just going to say RMEC from now on. But it was constructed in 1915, and this was a fairly popular design for grain elevators from around 1900 all the way until the 1940s. There was actually a brochure put out by a company in Chicago that had a whole bunch of different standard designs for grain elevators, and this is one of them. So you can actually find this design all around the country. So RMEC was founded in 1898 by George E. Gano and J.R. Baker. That's why it says Gano on the side of this, because eventually Gano actually bought out Baker. Through the beginning of the 1900s, RMEC was building grain elevators all along this stretch of the railroad, every 7 to 10 miles or so, and there were no plans to build one here until the Kansas Grain Company made plans to build one at this intersection. It's just an intersection between two roads that happens to be right at the railroad crossing. So Kansas Grain Company built one on the other side of this road that I'm standing by the side of, and not to be outdone, RMEC built one here. So they had two competing ones. So this grain elevator, like I said, was built in 1915. Originally, there was a lift to tilt up the wagons of the farmers and dump out the grain. But eventually farmers started driving trucks to carry their grain to market. So when they started driving trucks, those are much heavier, so they built a heavier lift to tilt the trucks back. Eventually, as the 20th century went on, farmers started driving semi-trucks instead of just normal trucks, and those are far too big to actually be lifted up by this grain elevator, by the lift at this grain elevator, and they couldn't build one that was large enough. So it started seeing less and less use. The farmers with semi-trucks would drive farther to take their grain to market than just coming here. And that happened with a lot of these country elevators that use this design. George Gano had a lot of different grain companies and a lot of different elevators that were run by those companies. In 1918, he actually bought Baker's share of RMEC. RMEC was eventually absorbed by the Gano Grain Corporation. That was in 1931. In 1947, the Gano Grain Corporation was absorbed into the Bunge Corporation out of New York. But Gano held on to this particular grain elevator with one of his other companies. He had another grain company, and he used that one to hold on to ownership of this particular elevator. This one wasn't This one wasn't actually sold until 1959, several years after Gano's death. This one was eventually closed in 1962 for the reasons that I stated earlier. It was sold to a private individual who actually used it for his own grain storage until, I believe, the 80s. That's what was kind of implied in the submission form for the National Registry for Historic Places. So there's a really cool history with this place. I really enjoyed researching about it, but now the light is getting good, so we are going to start taking some photos. One thing I like, hold on, that gap right over there, right on the horizon, that a lot of times, you'll see we have low clouds and then there's a gap along the horizon. A lot of times that means that the sunset is going to reflect a whole lot of red and orange into the clouds just above us. So that's the hope. First things first, while the light's getting good, I'm gonna take this shot. I found out earlier it was roughly a 28mm shot. I really like the way it's reflecting the light right now. Let me check that. I'm gonna chimp a little bit. Whoa, it looks so good. Here we go. All right. 3, 2, 1. That was 1/60th f8 ISO 400. I should mention we do have permission from the owners to be at their property. So I think probably to avoid standing on the tracks and all of the stuff that comes along with that, I'm going to use a super wide angle lens and set up pretty close to the tracks, but the super wide will allow me to have the train tracks going off into the distance along with the hey, it's the cops.
I'll poop.
Along with the grain elevator in the background. All right.
We're not doing anything illegal.
No, we're not.
Maybe he's just turning around.
How you guys doing?
Good. How about yourself?
Pretty good.
I did get permission from the owner to be on the property, so.
You're good.
Okay.
Yeah, we get a lot of people out here taking pictures of the
Oh yeah.
stuff.
It looks great, especially with the light the way it is.
Another one over here, but it was having some leaning issues, and
Yeah.
they had to tear it down.
Yeah. I talked to on the phone, who owns the place, phone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she was saying that that was only like a month ago that they had to tear it down.
The excuse me, the railroad made them tear it down
Yeah.
because it was leaning, and they were afraid it was going to come down in the middle of the night or something.
I'm glad it wasn't this one, because that one wasn't on the National Registry. This one is.
Yeah.
But yeah. We're yeah, we have all the permissions and everything,
you're
and
good,
we're
good. I just saw you guys over here. I figured I'd come over and chat. So
cool. Well, thank you, sir.
Yep. You guys have a good one.
You too. It's the cops. So I'm going to switch out lenses and go for the super wide.
I'm as wide as I can go.
So with the super wide, I'm also going to get a few handheld shots closer up, because I don't know, I think it's a fairly unique perspective. We still have a bit of time before sunset actually happens. So yeah, I'm gonna go with f4 to give myself a bit more light, and I can go with ISO 100 at that point. Lovely. Grand. Come with me. So for this shot, there are some grasses up in the foreground that I want to kind of incorporate. And that looks pretty good. Although it is, okay, for this one, the angle of the embankment here is going to hide the railroad tracks. And I'm gonna make sure I'm in focus here. Good. Got the sun over on the right side of this shot. Beautiful. Okay.
It's so pretty.
We're starting to get some good reflections in the clouds now, so I'm gonna head back to my hero shot location. Ooh, that looks super cool. So this shot is looking great. I'm gonna underexpose it by just a little bit. I'm going off of what the histogram says rather than the light meter itself. The sun is just about to go down. We've got some really great reflection going on in the clouds right over here. It's in focus. 2-second timer. There were some clouds right along the horizon that we weren't able to see because the sun was too bright. Those kind of choked out any color that was going to be reflecting in the clouds, except for when the sun was right on the horizon, like before it went down. So I did get a couple of good shots, but right now we are checking the weather to see if we're gonna get clear skies. If we are, we're gonna stick around and we'll take some Milky Way shots. Okay, good news. It's not as cloudy as the weather app said it was going to be. So Mary and I are back to do some Milky Way photography. So I gotta get this lens off of this camera and get that super wide onto it. And let's do this. We should be able to get the Milky Way rising straight up out of the grain elevator, which would be awesome. If not, we'll get it close. Okay, so we're trying to do some Milky Way photography. But we are next to a road. Okay, gonna take another shot as soon as this semi passes, because we should have some dark sky time. And here we go. 15-second exposure, ISO 3200. I don't know if we'll be able to stack these exposures just because of all the cars that are passing and the light that they cast onto the subject. So I had a lot of fun taking photos at this grain elevator tonight. We got a few good film shots. We got some good sunset shots, some good Milky Way shots. It's a very photogenic place and it has a really cool history. And it's a history that's shared by a lot of structures that you find around Kansas. It's something that you see all over the U.S. as you travel across it. And it was really cool for me to be able to learn some of that history. If you made it all the way to the end, like and subscribe. That really helps out my numbers, and it helps me reach more people with these videos. Just a shameless plug for myself. I do event photography. I do portraits, corporate headshots, family photos, that kind of thing. So if you need any photography done, I'm your guy. Go to my website. It's in the description. Also check out Mary's photography at Moon11 Photography on Facebook and Instagram. That's about it. Thanks. Bye. In 1947, the Gano Grain Corporation was absorbed into the Bunge Corporation in New York. How do you like that name? Bunge. What a name. Just so that, hold on, let me point you at my face.
If you're recording, you about got me falling on my ass.
Shooting at like ISO 32,000 on the video camera. Don't try this at home, kids.